Okay, I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk with you about how your assignment entries in Canvas are organized, and there are some things about how the questions are set up so that they can possibly auto grade, but what goes into determining whether or not you get credit for the auto graded assignments, and then just clarifying any other information that I want you to know about submitting work in Canvas. Okay, so let's start off by talking about questions where you have to upload a file or an image. So at this point, you should only be uploading images of one question, one graph, one something. But eventually, you guys are going to be getting assignments where I'm going to need you to upload a document, and perhaps it's going to be multiple pages. It's really important that you figure out a way to upload the file so that it is one file, regardless of how many pieces of paper or how many pages that particular assignment or question required you to use. Okay, so for the density lab, we had a place where we're asking you to upload this graphing space and mark on it, create your own graph, and then you are supposed to somehow take your graph and upload it so that you can submit it to be graded. So, how are you supposed to go about getting this image to be something that you can manipulate? Well, if we go to the actual assignment, and right now I am on my Canvas page, but I'm in student view, so this should allow me the same permissions that you would get as a student. So you may not noticeably see any kind of link here, and depending on how I have included the image or the file, it may or may not be clearly identifiable that it's an attachment or that it's a link or something that you can just kind of click on and upload directly. So sometimes I'll have a PDF. It'll be very obvious that it's a PDF file. You click on it, you upload it, print it, save it, whatever it is you choose to do with it. In this particular case, if you simply put your finger on the graphing space and hold down, it gives you an option here of what you want to do with that. So it is up to you at this point. You can choose to add it to your photos if you want to manipulate this electronically. That might be the easiest way to do it, because now you can take that photo and you can either go to photo editor and you can create your graph there, or you might want to take that photo and then open Keynote or open Notability or something like that, and then drop that photo onto that particular app so that you have some white space around it so that you can put all of your labels and things, right? So you have that option there. It has the option for you to click share. So, depending on what apps you have available and what you have allowed to be shared with, I could also just say right here that I'm going to choose to drop that into Notability, and then it's right there for me so that I can begin editing. Okay, so that's one way that you can go about downloading or saving that particular file or image. Okay, so once you get it edited and you are ready to submit that, it says that you need to drag and drop or browse through your files in order to upload that image so that I can view it and grade it. If you put it in your photos or if you put it in Notability, you should be able to share from your Notability, and you can either, if you're on a laptop or a computer, obviously you can go and find that file from your computer like normal. If you're doing this on your iPad, even on your cell phone, but preferably you're on your iPad, you can go to browse and then you can pull it from your library or you can pull it from your Notability or whatever it is, okay? But what if you didn't upload it electronically and manipulate it on your device? What if you captured the image or saved the PDF and then you printed it and you did it by hand? How are you going to go about getting that document back on an electronic version so that you can upload it? Well, I would recommend there is an app that I use. I actually got this last year and I used it to help me submit some of the work that my children were being asked to submit for their classes. and it's called Tiny Scanner, and it is a free app. You can get it in the App Store. I don't believe that there are any restrictions to you guys getting this app, so I do believe that this is something that you can choose to use if you'd like, or you can use the Notes app, which is already on your iPad. Okay, so real quickly, I want to show you how this will work. If you go to your Tiny Scanner, I personally really like the Tiny Scanner. I just find it pretty easy to use, and it has some additional editing features that might come in handy because sometimes maybe the coloring of the page or the quality of the printing or things like that might give you a little bit of trouble. So what I'm doing here is I'm on my Tiny Scanner app, and I'm going to click the plus sign, and it's going to allow me to take a picture. Okay, so I'm going to hold my iPad so that the document is in the screen, and then I click the capture. Now the thing that I like about this Tiny Scanner is that it automatically recognizes what it believes to be your paper or your image, but you see though that you have the ability to manipulate what it's going to capture for that document. So I just find that to be a really nice feature because sometimes we only want a piece of the picture or the page, and I just love that it helps you recognize that. So I'm going to hit done, and then it gives me an image here. I can choose to change the coloring on that image. I can let it be show some of the color. So it actually showed there was yellow highlight on the image on the document. It's not quite so obvious once I printed it out, but it's pretty awesome that the app recognized that. Or I can come down here and I can say that I want it to be a color print picture, or it can just make it black and white. And so once I've decided the version that I like, and I would recommend that you pick whatever version is going to give you the best quality image for your teacher to see, then I click save. Now I have my file here. It did allow me, oh sorry, I went too fast. It did allow me to edit that, so I can give this a title to make it easy for me to find it later or to confirm that I've uploaded the correct document whenever I get ready to pull it from my files later. And then if I click on it, there's a little pencil and paper image. That's actually going to allow me to do edits if I saved it or click saved without editing first. If I look on the far left, there is the paper with the plus sign. That's if I have an assignment that's more than one page, which you will have in the future. So if you're a person that you like to print it out and then do your work by hand, you're going to need to have some sort of option where you can do multiple pages. So then I just go to the next page, I capture my image, and then it's exactly the same thing that I did the first time around. Click done. It gave me the option to rotate the image. And so there's just some nice little editing features here. I can change the contrast or the darkness. So I really think that this is a great app, and because what it does is it saves everything. You can see that this is page 2 of 2. So now I could either go and share this directly from the app into my Canvas app if I've set up my iPad to allow me to do that, or I can choose to save it as a specific file. So perhaps I want to save it into my physics tutorials file to allow me to find it easier later. So this is just one way that you can capture that. The other option would be to use your notes feature if you have not learned about this yet. If I go and create a new note and I click on the camera, I can say that I want to scan documents. And then it essentially works the same way. It recognizes my document. I can add more pages by just going and take another picture, and it's just going to add it to it. It will allow me to save it so that it would then be one file upload. And that, honestly, as your teacher, that is going to be one of my biggest requests, is that if you have an assignment where you're supposed to upload something, I need it to be one file upload. It does affect my ability to grade your assignment. Okay? All right. When you finished your density lab, for those of you who have done it, it gave you this message that said that you have 3 questions that require grading. So I just went through the quiz or the assignment so that I could get to this screen, so I have 0% and 0 points. For you, it will tell you how many points you have earned based off of what it auto graded for you, but it's telling you right off the bat, I'm not done grading. Okay, Canvas wasn't able to grade everything. Anytime you have a question where you have to upload a file, like we've just been discussing, or those questions where you have text box entries where it looks like you're just typing a text message, or maybe you're in like a Word document kind of window, or an email, that's probably more accurate, an email window. Those, Canvas is not going to attempt to auto grade those. That's always going to require my attention in order to determine points. Okay. All right. Let's talk about whenever you are given a question where you maybe have solved for a variable, and now you need to give me some information about that variable as your response to the question. So when you guys took your variable quiz, this one was not asking for a numerical response. This was asking you to read a setup or a graph title or something like that, and then simply identify what was the independent variable and what was the dependent variable. So this is an answer from one of my students that completed this assignment. And so you can see here that the student said watching alone / with others, but it's outlined in red because Canvas auto graded that as an incorrect response. Now if you look below, it listed what the correct answers are. And so the correct answers are alone or with others or alone. And you may be thinking, okay, why did it count that wrong? Because that essentially means the same thing. You guys have to remember, this is a computer program that is grading for you. It does not have the ability to interpret and then make a reasonable decision based off of your answer. It can only interpret what I have entered for it to interpret. So things like the capitalized W for watching, alone, with, and others, those are all capitalized. So that's different than what Canvas was given. You can see the answers were all lowercase, right? I said or for the answer key, and there's a slash. So don't get upset, don't panic, because it said that it counted it wrong. I will always go and review your answer submissions anytime you have an assignment where you have to manually type in your answer. Okay, I do my best to try to give Canvas options that I think are going to be common answers, but I cannot possibly think of every possible answer that you would come up with. Okay, so as a general rule, don't use capitalization unless it would be grammatically necessary. I mean, typically, if we're just answering with the fragment, it's not a beginning of the sentence, so I'm not capitalizing that. So that's just going to assist with the auto grading accuracy. I will definitely go back and give this student credit for this answer because that is an acceptable answer. Okay. So I just wanted to share with you, here is a different question where the student did get credit according to Canvas because they put time. So you don't see time listed in lowercase without the unit exactly like the student typed it, because it was just saying, oh yes, your answer matched this preset acceptable answer. But I also wanted to show you that in this particular case, I did go in and put time with a capital T, and I did also give both versions with the unit attached to it, just because I wasn't sure how many students were going to include the unit, because this question was based off of a data table. And so I tried to look at the way the question was presented and give what I thought would be the most common answers that students would choose to use. Again, in the future, if you don't have to capitalize, don't. If you have units that need to be there, the same goes for the unit. A capitalized unit and a lowercase unit do represent two different things, so do not change it up, okay? All right, now for your math review check and for the quiz that you will be taking for the Unit 0 quiz, you're still learning how to enter your answers in Canvas for the auto grade. So I'm going to give a little more variation on acceptable answers here, but I want to point out some things that are limitations that come with the Canvas app. As a teacher, as a creator of the assignment, there are certain things that I am limited on. There are certain formats that I'm going to use that I need you to learn to be kind of the norm. So in the beginning, I gave you a question where you were supposed to manually type in your answer, and all I was asking you to provide for me was the numerical portion, and you can see here that I've already provided what that unit should be. But then at another place, I asked you to type in the calculated answer, and I'm asking you to type in the unit. So in this first assignment, I gave in the question directions as well, and I clarified that the first box should be for the numerical value and the second box should be for the unit. I want you to understand moving forward that is going to be the norm. If I'm asking you to calculate something and you have two boxes, the first box is the number, the second box is for the unit. So this is going to be the typical layout or format that we're going to use. Now, I did this so that it spit back some wrong answers, or I didn't put an answer so that it would tell me what the right answers are. I purposely got it wrong so that I could show you how I have preset the answer. So I want to point out in the numerical portion for these two questions, one is 1.00 and the other is 1.0. Now these are two different questions, okay? But I want to point out that all numerical answers should have the correct number of significant figures. So if you put 1 or 1.0 as your answer for the density of water in this very first example, it would have counted those wrong. I would not have given you credit for those answers because those would be incorrectly representing the number of significant figures that are appropriate for that particular answer. So in this case, there's only one right answer, 1.00, because according to the significant figures rule, that's what it should come out to be. Okay, on the right hand side, I wanted to point out that in this case, I only have one correct option for not only the numerical value, but also for the unit. Now in this lab, I hope that you noticed that I provided grams per milliliter throughout the lab. So when it was time for you to go and enter the unit on your own, the hope is that you have seen it as lowercase g / lowercase m, capital L, no spaces, and you automatically typed it exactly the same way because that's how I had given it to you. If you did do things slightly different, if you gave me a capital G, if you put spaces before and after the slashes, this is your first set of assignments, so I'm going to be gracious the first time around, and I'm going to perhaps give some credit for some of those answers even though they don't match exactly. But please understand, by the time we get into our unit 1, you're going to need to be expected to understand that lowercase and capital letters matter. The way that we space it or not, I'm going to hopefully show you how that should be done just from your completion of the assignments along the way, so that you will know what is expected come grading time. Okay? All right, so how does it auto grade, and how does Canvas know what is or is not acceptable? Well, that's all based off of what I put in the preset acceptable answers. So here's how I am going to choose to do this, okay? I've already gone over how we would fill in the answers for the Powerade slope, where we typed in the number and we provided the unit. But I want you to look at this new example here. So in this question, it was a conversion question, and I'm asking you to convert from centimeters to kilometers. But if you'll notice, there's actually more than one acceptable answer there. Does that mean that there's more than one right answer? No. There's only there's only one right answer, but there is more than one acceptable way to represent the right answer. So if you notice, I have 0.03. If you look at that last answer that it provided, I have 0.03. 0.03. Now, hopefully you and I both are in agreement here that leading zero does not matter. So I will preset the auto grading feature to accept both 0.03 and 0.3. There's no reason for me to have to go and interpret that for Canvas. I can just say either of these is acceptable. But if you look in the middle, 3 times 10 to the negative 2. Okay, so now we need to talk a little bit about what if the answer is provided in scientific notation, because you are being asked to give some answers. Sometimes you have the flexibility to decide whether or not you'd rather type it in scientific notation or just put it as a decimal, like you have the option here. Sometimes it is written in the instructions for you to type it in scientific notation. So I want to elaborate on that, okay? So first, if you read what I guess would be the question in this particular example, I'm actually providing you information here. It says, that's a typo. When you need to type in an answer into a fill in the blank question. Sorry, I didn't proofread that. My editor, meaning the program that allows me to create the assignment, okay, the question editor, will allow me to use special font in my question. So I put in parentheses x squared. You see I'm able to make that a lowercase x with the superscript 2. It lets me change my font a little in the box where I'm creating the question. But my auto grader feature does not. So if you look below, I am pre-typing what those answers should be for your fill in the blanks. And if you'll notice, 2.0 times 10 to the negative 2. That's what that first box is supposed to read. That is a numerical value expressed in scientific notation, but it looks a little funny. So let's talk about how we're going to write in scientific notation. Do not give me an E. If you gave me an E on these initial assignments because you didn't know any better, remember, all questions that you have to manually type in your answer, I will review them before your grade is finalized. So for this first assignment, if you gave me E's, I will give you some grace. I will go and give credit as long as it correctly represents the value that was needed. But in the future, E's will not earn credit. Okay, it needs to be written out times 10. Now, if you look at my answer choices here, these are all the ways that I am pre-programming Canvas to accept the value 2.0 times 10 to the negative 2. So let's look and see what's different about them. Well, first off, there is no superscript. I don't have the ability to do superscript. I learned last year that some of my students do have the ability to use superscripts and special fonts and dots for multiplication signs and all of that fun stuff on their entry point. I do not. So please do not use any special stuff because my program will not allow me to set that as an acceptable correct answer. Okay? I would prefer that you set it up the way that I did for the very first option for acceptable answers on the list. 2.0, the times I used a lowercase letter x times 10, and then I just put my negative 2. If it weren't a negative, it would just be a 2, okay? So when I look at this, there's no spaces. I didn't separate any part of the number. It is all one number. If it was 1,234, I wouldn't put any spaces in there, okay? So I did not put any spaces here. That's how I would prefer that you enter that in. Now, again, there are some things where it's okay if you do things a little differently. I will tell you though, guys, it is time consuming for me to go in and manually type in 6 or 7 or however many different ways that the student could possibly type in the right answer. So I'm setting the precedent now moving forward. I would like for you to type in scientific notation using a lowercase x and no spaces in between anything, and your exponent is just going to be typed as a regular number, but that's how I'm going to preset it. If we look, I did add some variation for this first time. I put some space before and after the times symbol on the second choice. On the third option, I put a space in between everything. So I spaced and then I put my exponent, and then I did the exact same set of spacing options, but I made it with a capital X instead of a lowercase. In the future, please use lowercase and no spaces, okay? Now, if you'll notice in this answer, I went with a unit that had a squared variable. So this is meters per second squared. But if you notice, that's a 2, right? Well, once again, that's because my auto grading preset, what do you want me to accept when I grade this for you, Miss Espinosa? That feature does not allow me to do superscripts. So what I would prefer you do is type it m/s2, because it should be a squared superscript on the 2, but since I don't have that feature, I'd rather you not do that, okay? Now, I did go in and show you that I understand that if you're typing on the iPad and you're using the keyboard, it automatically capitalizes that very first letter. You have to be very particular about going and editing that so that you can make it a lowercase. So I will do my best to remember to put it as an option with the first letter capitalized, just because I know that the iPad does that to you automatically. If I miss one and it counts it wrong, again, don't panic. I go and I review every answer that you guys have to manually put in. Okay, so if I miss one here or there, it's not a big deal. I should catch it in my approval of the grading. Okay. I did go ahead and put in some spaces here just because I was showing you that those are options. But again, I'm asking in the future, please do not put in those spaces. The way that I have it listed as the very first entry is the way that I would prefer that you type it in. Now, sometimes students want to type it out in words. I'd rather you didn't. It's just not the normal way that we write things. I will sometimes put my units in words during the questions, but when it comes to writing out our final answer, we typically just don't. We typically just say m/s squared. But if you want to write it out in meters per second, I do normally put in one option like I did here where it's all lowercase space like you would write on paper. So I just wanted to give you some insight. I know some of you are probably concerned or puzzled or questioning some of the auto grading that has taken place for the assignments you've already completed for me. So please understand it does take me time to go in and review everybody's assignment, but the grade that it spits out to you when you've hit submit is not your official grade. That is the grade that Canvas has calculated based off of what Canvas is capable of interpreting and grading. I am going to go and review everything that you have submitted, and then I will go and post your grades in the Canvas gradebook after I have reviewed all of the students' entries and manipulated or provided back points for things that I feel students should have earned credit for that Canvas didn't catch. Okay. And again, for these first couple of assignments, I'm going to be very gracious on what versions I allow to be counted correct answers. But moving forward, I'm going to need you to follow the format that I have laid out in this video. Okay. After you have received notification or you've seen on Canvas, I thought that was going to stay on the screen for us, that I have auto graded, or I'm sorry, that I have posted your grade, and you feel like that I missed something, you feel there is an answer that you should have gotten credit for, but you didn't, and maybe it was because one of these editing things, please email me, or if we're back in the classroom, talk to me in person. Please don't be rude about it, guys. I am human and I make mistakes. I miss things. It is not uncommon for me to be grading assignments late at night. And so, sometimes I don't know if it's because the TV's on in the background and I got distracted. My kid came up and needed something and I had to stop what I was doing to go take care of them, or I was falling asleep while I was grading. Or maybe I just flat out missed it. Maybe I just went too fast and I just missed it. I miss things. It happens. Mistakes happen. Please have some grace with me all the time. At home, in person, doesn't matter. If you feel I made a mistake, just simply come talk to me. Be polite and respectful about it. I will be more than happy to look over it. And if I honestly miss something, I'll fix it. Not a big deal. If it's a situation where you thought you should have earned credit, but at this point in the year, guys, I am only accepting this, or this, or this is wrong because you had too many sig figs, or this is wrong because you didn't round correctly. That should have rounded up to a 1.0 instead of a 0.9. Then I'll explain that to you. Okay. But please do not panic over auto grading things that you think are wrong. Please wait until I have had an opportunity to review it. And then I will quote unquote post all of the grades into the Canvas gradebook once I have finished reviewing all student entries. Okay. All right, if you have additional questions about any of the grading stuff, please feel free to ask me along the way. Please make sure that you are working in Canvas and completing your assignments as asked of you on a daily basis. I am trying to give you exposure to different types of questions throughout your practice work so that when it comes to a graded quiz or a test or a lab, you already know what the expectation is for the format. So then hopefully all grading would really just need to be based off of the accuracy of your answer.